For 3,000 years, the Varkesh were the nightmare hidden in every star map. They were the hunters that hunted hunters. Entire species whispered their name with fear. Because once the Varkesh chose their prey, the hunt always ended the same way. The prey ran, the Varkesh followed, and nobody escaped. Then they made a mistake. For their greatest hunt, they chose a human, not a soldier, not a war hero, not even a marine, a rescue worker. One man, one backpack, one frozen world. The galaxy expected the hunt to last a few hours. Instead, the Varkesh began finding traps meant for predators, warnings that saved their lives, and evidence that their prey was no longer running. By the third day, the greatest hunters in the galaxy had stopped asking where the human was. They started asking something far more terrifying. How does he always know where we'll be? Because somewhere beneath the frozen skies of Kepri 9, the hunters were about to learn a truth they had never considered. The moment a human stops trying to survive and starts trying to protect others, he becomes the most dangerous thing in the universe. This is the story of how the galaxy's greatest hunters tracked one human and became the prey. For 3,000 years, the galaxy feared only one name, the Varkesh Dominion. Among hundreds of intelligent civilizations, countless fleets, and empires that stretched across entire spiral arms, none inspired terror quite like the Varkesh. They were not conquerors. Conquerors sought territory. The Varkesh sought proof. Proof that they remained the apex predators of the stars. Every generation, their greatest warriors embark upon what they call the Grand Pursuit, a sacred hunt designed to test their supremacy against the most dangerous creatures the galaxy could offer. Gigantic sand leviathans from desert moons, crystal serpents that swam through asteroid belts, predatory hive queens capable of tearing armored vehicles apart. Every species eventually became part of the stories told in Varkesh hatcheries. Stories of victories, stories of trophies, stories of prey. No species had ever escaped the hunt until humanity arrived. The first contact between humans and the wider galaxy had been surprisingly peaceful. Human diplomats smiled often. They shook hands. They exchanged art, music, and scientific knowledge. To most civilizations, humans appeared almost disappointingly ordinary. They lacked claws. They lacked natural armor. They possessed no venom, no psychic abilities, no adaptive camouflage. Physically speaking, they looked fragile, soft, breakable. The Varkesh laughed when they saw them. You cross the stars with those bodies? The human ambassador merely smiled. We had practice. The answer confused them. Years later, during the gathering of the Galactic Assembly, a young Varkesh commander named Krell spoke openly before representatives from dozens of worlds. Humans hide behind machines and diplomacy because they know their place in nature. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The human representative simply raised an eyebrow. And what place is that? Krell's mandibles clicked with amusement. Prey. The room fell silent. The human merely nodded. That's an interesting theory. Krell interpreted the response as fear. It was not. It was patience. Months later, the Varkesh announced their newest grand pursuit. Their target would be humanity. Not humanity as a civilization. Just one human. A single representative chosen by the Galactic Council to ensure fairness. One hunter against one prey species. The galaxy erupted into outrage. The Varkesh ignored them. To refuse the hunt was considered cowardice. To accept meant risking humiliation. The Council expected humanity to decline. Instead, humanity surprised everyone. Again, the response from Earth contained only 7 words. Choose your hunters. We'll choose our human. For the first time in centuries, the Varkesh were excited. Their greatest hunt awaited. 3 hunters were selected. Commander Krell, veteran tracker Urshurin, and the legendary huntmaster Vorik himself. Together they had never failed. Together they had hunted creatures capable of destroying cities. Their target profile arrived shortly afterward. Name, Elias Ward. Age, 37. Occupation, search and rescue specialist. The hunters stared at the file. Search and rescue? Krell asked. Not military? No. Security forces? No. Vorik tilted his head. So, the humans sent a civilian. Sharun laughed. They insult us. The attached image only deepened their confusion. The human was average height, average build, brown hair, no visible enhancements, no combat history, no military commendations, nothing. The galaxy expected a legendary warrior. Humanity had sent a rescue worker. The hunt location would be the abandoned moon of Kepri 9, a frozen world covered by mountains, forests, and ancient mining facilities abandoned centuries earlier. The rules were simple. The human would receive a 12-hour head start. The hunters would pursue. The hunt ended when the human was captured. Simple, predictable, inevitable. At least that was what the Varkesh believed. When Elias Ward arrived at Kepri 9, journalists from dozens of worlds watched the live transmission. The human stepped off the shuttle carrying a backpack. No weapons, no armor, no visible fear. One reporter asked the obvious question, "Are you afraid?" Elias considered the question carefully. Of course. The answer surprised everyone. You admit it openly? He smiled. Being brave isn't about not being afraid. He looked toward the distant mountains. It's about deciding something matters more than fear. The transmission spread rapidly across the galaxy. Most species didn't understand the statement. The Varkesh dismissed it as primitive philosophy. 12 hours later, the hunt began. Krell found the first tracks immediately. Human boot prints. Fresh. Obvious. He's making this easy. Sharun studied the terrain. Too easy. Vorik remained silent. Hours passed. The trail wound through forests and frozen valleys. Sometimes Elias appeared careless. Broken branches. Visible footprints. Discarded food wrappers. Mistakes no experienced prey animal would make. Krell grinned. The human panics. Vorik knelt beside one footprint. No. What? Look closer. The tracks were evenly spaced. Measured. Controlled. The pace never changed. This was not running. This was leading. Before Krell could respond, the ground disappeared beneath him. The hunter crashed into a concealed pit hidden beneath snow and branches. Alarms blared inside his armor. Minor injuries. Nothing serious. But impossible. Predators laid traps. Prey fled. That was nature's law. Wasn't it? Krell climbed out furious. Vorik examined the trap. It was built in under 10 minutes. Impossible. Perhaps for us. The old huntmaster looked toward the mountains. Not for him. For the first time, the hunters realized something unsettling. The human wasn't escaping. He was preparing. By nightfall, they reached an abandoned mining station. The door stood open. Inside sat a fire, still burning, and beside it, a meal, freshly cooked. Waiting, Krell immediately reached for his weapon. Trap. Probably. Yet beside the food lay a handwritten note. It read, "You've been walking for 14 hours without rest. Predators make mistakes when exhausted. Eat something." Elias. The hunters stared in disbelief. Sharun scanned for explosives. Nothing. Poisons. Nothing. Hidden weapons. Nothing. Just food. Why? Krell asked. Vorik looked at the flames. Because he expected us to arrive hungry. The old hunter sat beside the fire. Slowly, he began eating. The others stared at him. You trust him? Vorik shook his head. No. He looked toward the darkness beyond the station. I think he understands something we don't. Far away, hidden among the cliffs above, Elias watched through binoculars. Then he smiled. Because the hunt had finally begun. Not the hunt the Varkesh expected. The hunt he had planned from the beginning. Because search and rescue specialists knew something soldiers often forgot. Survival wasn't about defeating the environment. It wasn't about overpowering your enemy. It was about understanding people, understanding fear, understanding exhaustion, understanding hope. And Elias Ward understood something else. The greatest hunters in the galaxy had spent their entire lives believing they were predators. Nobody had ever taught them what it felt like to be hunted. The snowstorm arrived before dawn. Kepri 9 had once been famous among miners for its unpredictable weather. Entire excavation teams had vanished beneath white walls of ice that seemed to appear from nowhere. Visibility dropped to less than 20 meters. Sensors struggled. Thermal scanners flickered with interference. For the first time in centuries, the greatest hunters in the galaxy could not trust their eyes. Commander Krell hated it. He's hiding behind the storm. Vorik adjusted his cloak against the freezing wind. No. The old hunt master studied the endless white horizon. The storm hides us from him just as much as it hides him from us. Sharun checked the trackers again. Nothing. No movement. No heat signatures. No footprints. The human had vanished. Krell slammed a fist against a frozen rock. He's a civilian. He shouldn't be capable of this. Vorik remained silent, because the evidence surrounding them suggested otherwise. The pit trap, the prepared shelter, the food, the controlled footprints. None of it matched prey behavior. None of it matched the image they had built of humanity. Hours passed. The storm intensified. Their heavy armor protected them from the cold, but even advanced systems had limits. Energy reserves slowly dropped. Visibility worsened. Every shadow became suspicious. Every sound felt wrong. Then Sharun stopped moving. Movement. All 3 hunters froze. A figure stood on a distant ridge. Human. Motionless. Watching. Krell activated magnification. It was Elias, standing openly against the snow. No weapon in his hands. No attempt to hide. The human simply raised one arm and pointed toward the east. Then he disappeared over the ridge. Krell immediately moved to pursue. Vorik grabbed his shoulder. Wait! He's escaping. No. Vorik looked toward the direction Elias had indicated. He's warning us. Seconds later the mountain answered. A deep crack echoed through the valley. Then came another, and another. The hunters looked upward. The entire slope above them had begun to move. Avalanche. Thousands of tons of ice and rock thundered downward. The Varkesh sprinted for cover. The world disappeared beneath white chaos. When silence finally returned, the valley no longer existed. The place where they had stood moments earlier was buried beneath meters of snow. Krell stared at the destruction. He saved us. Sharun spoke quietly. Why? No one answered. Because predators did not save prey. Prey certainly did not save predators. Yet the facts remained buried beneath the snow behind them. The human had seen danger. The human had warned them. The human had disappeared. Hours later, they found another message attached to a broken mining beacon. The handwriting was identical. Nature doesn't care who wins a hunt. Stay away from the southern cliffs. The ice there won't hold your weight. Krell crushed the paper in his hand. He's mocking us. Vorik disagreed. No. Then explain this. The old hunter looked toward the mountains. Perhaps humans don't divide the universe into hunters and prey as easily as we do. The idea felt absurd, impossible. Yet every hour on Kepri, 9 made it harder to dismiss. By evening, the storm finally weakened. The hunters discovered fresh tracks leading toward an abandoned communications facility buried high in the mountains. This time the trail looked hurried. Uneven steps, sliding marks, signs of exhaustion. Krell smiled. Finally, they followed quickly. The tracks led directly inside the ruined station. Weapons ready, the hunters entered. Empty. No human. Only equipment spread across the room. Maps, medical supplies, portable heaters, emergency rations. Vorik examined the setup carefully. This wasn't a hiding place. Then what was it? The old hunt master picked up a medical scanner. A rescue station. Krell frowned. Rescue for who? Before Vorik could answer, an emergency signal erupted across every channel. A civilian transport shuttle had crashed approximately 60 kilometers away. Survivors unknown. The storm had forced an emergency landing. Power failure. Structural damage. Life support unstable. The hunters exchanged confused glances. Krell looked toward the signal source. That isn't possible. The crash site was beyond the hunting zone, completely unrelated to the grand pursuit. Then they heard engines. Outside, Crossing the snowfield at impossible speed, Elias Ward raced across the ice aboard a modified transport sled. Not away from danger. Toward it. Krell stared in disbelief. Where is he going? Vorik already knew. To the survivors. The hunters watched the sled disappear into the distance. He'll lose the hunt, Sharun said. Yes. He knows that. Yes. Krell shook his head. Then why go? The old huntmaster answered quietly. Because someone needs help. For several moments nobody spoke. Because among the Varkesh, the answer made no sense. The hunt came first. Honor came first. Victory came first. Yet the human had abandoned all of it without hesitation, as if the decision required no thought at all. Krell looked toward the distant mountains. He gave up his chance to win. Vorik corrected him. No. The old hunter watched the horizon carefully. I think we're beginning to understand what winning means to humans. Hours later they reached the crash site. The shuttle lay broken across the ice. Its hull had split open during impact. Emergency lights flickered weakly against the darkness. And there was Elias, moving through the wreckage, carrying survivors, treating injuries, repairing heating systems, organizing evacuation shelters, working without pause. A small alien child cried beside the wreckage. Elias removed his own thermal jacket and wrapped it around the child despite the freezing temperature. Krell stared. His body can't survive long without protection. Elias seemed unconcerned. He simply continued working. One injured survivor grabbed his arm. You should save yourself. The human smiled. That's not really my specialty. Another explosion shook the shuttle. Fuel lines ruptured. Fire spread rapidly through the wreckage. Inside the ship, motion sensors detected movement. 3 passengers remained trapped. Structural collapse was imminent. Everyone heard the warning. Everyone understood what it meant. No one moved, except Elias. The human grabbed emergency gear and ran directly into the burning shuttle. Krell stepped forward instinctively. He's going to die. Minutes passed. Then more. The fire grew worse. Even Varkesh military armor would struggle to survive those temperatures. Then, through smoke and flame, a figure emerged. Elias carried one survivor over his shoulder while supporting another with his free arm. Behind him walked a third, alive. The crowd erupted with relief. But Krell noticed something else. The human staggered. His suit had melted in places. Burn injuries covered his arms. He collapsed to one knee. Still, his first words were not about himself. Is everyone out? A medic nodded. Everyone. Only then did Elias allow himself to breathe. The Varkesh watched silently, because they had witnessed courage before. They respected bravery. But this felt different. This was not bravery in pursuit of glory. Not bravery for status. Not bravery for victory. This was sacrifice without expectation of reward. The old huntmaster finally spoke. In all my years, I have hunted creatures capable of destroying armies. He looked toward the injured human, surrounded by survivors. But I have never seen anything more dangerous than a species willing to suffer for strangers. Krell said nothing, because for the first time in his life, the hunter was afraid, not of humanity's weapons, not of their technology, but of the possibility that everything he believed about strength was wrong. By every measure recognized by the Varkesh Dominion, the hunt should have been over. The human had abandoned concealment. He had surrendered his advantage. He had exposed his position repeatedly. He had wasted precious resources helping strangers. According to every law of survival the hunters had ever known, Elias Ward had already lost. Yet, somehow, the hunt continued. The survivors from the crashed shuttle were evacuated the following morning by emergency rescue craft from the Galactic Assembly. As the transports lifted into the pale skies of Kepri 9, many of the rescued passengers stood silently by the windows, watching, not the Varkesh hunters. The human, the exhausted rescue worker, standing alone on the ice. Several survivors pressed their hands against the glass as the shuttle rose. One child waved. Elias waved back. Then he turned and began walking toward the mountains once more, back into the hunt. Krell watched him disappear into the snow. He could have left. Vorik nodded. Yes. he would have been celebrated across the galaxy. Probably. Krell looked toward the horizon. So why stay? The old huntmaster answered immediately, because he gave his word. The words lingered in the cold air. Humans were confusing creatures. They ran toward danger, protected strangers, kept promises that no longer benefited them. The logic simply refused to fit together. For the first time in centuries, the hunters followed their prey with uncertainty. By midday, they found another trail. This one led into the abandoned mining tunnels beneath the northern ridge. Darkness swallowed the entrance. Krell activated his helmet lights. The tunnels stretched for kilometers beneath the mountains. Perfect terrain for ambushes. Perfect terrain for traps. Sharun checked the scanners. Movement detected. Human. Unknown. The signal vanished, then returned, then vanished again. Vorik narrowed his eyes. Something else is down here. The answer came quickly. The tunnels shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep metallic scream echoed through the darkness. Then came another. Krell recognized the sound immediately. Mining drones. Centuries earlier, Kepri 9's automated mining systems had malfunctioned during a magnetic storm. Without oversight, the machines had continued operating for generations, repairing themselves, expanding tunnels, defending their territory. The surviving drones had become dangerous, extremely dangerous. A machine burst through the darkness ahead. Massive cutting arms spun through the air. Industrial lasers ignited. Krell raised his weapon. The drone fired first. The blast struck the ceiling. Rock exploded downward. The hunters scattered. More signals appeared. 5, 10, 20. The entire tunnel network was waking up. They think we're intruders, Sharun shouted. Because we are, Vorik replied. The drones advanced. The hunters retreated deeper into the mine. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. Their helmet systems struggled to compensate. Navigation failed. Communication fractured into static. For the first time since childhood, Commander Krell experienced something unfamiliar. Disorientation. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Human footsteps. A light appeared in the darkness. A flashlight. Simple. Primitive. Effective. Elias Ward stood at the end of the tunnel. You're going the wrong way. Krell stared at him. You came back. The human raised an eyebrow. You looked lost. Another explosion echoed through the tunnels. The drones were getting closer. Elias tossed a small device toward them. An old mining map projected into the air. Follow me if you want to leave alive. The human turned and ran. The hunters exchanged glances, then followed. The tunnels twisted endlessly beneath the mountains. Several times Elias changed direction moments before cutting lasers sliced through the passage behind them. Several times he warned them about unstable floors or collapsing supports before their sensors detected anything. Eventually, Krell spoke the question all three had been thinking. How do you know this place so well? Without slowing down, Elias answered, Rescue training. Your training includes abandoned death tunnels? The human shrugged. Mostly mountains. Some caves. A volcano once. Krell was no longer certain when humans were joking. Eventually, they reached an ancient maintenance chamber and sealed the doors behind them. Silence returned. For a few moments, nobody spoke. Then Vorik looked directly at Elias. You saved us again. The human sat against the wall. You would have done the same. The three hunters said nothing, because they knew that wasn't true. Not a week earlier, they would have left competitors behind without hesitation. The hunt demanded victory. Compassion complicated things. Elias seemed to understand their silence immediately. You're not bad people. Krell frowned. You don't know us. The human smiled slightly. I know enough. Outside, metal claws scraped against reinforced doors. The drones were searching, waiting, hunting. Krell suddenly understood the irony. The greatest hunters in the galaxy were trapped underground while something else searched for them. For the first time in his life, he understood prey, the uncertainty, the helplessness, the constant awareness that something stronger might be nearby. It was exhausting. No wonder prey animals ran. No wonder civilizations feared invasion. No wonder weaker species avoided conflict whenever possible. The realization disturbed him deeply. Hours later, they escaped through emergency maintenance shafts leading back to the surface. Night had fallen across Kepri 9. Above them stretched an ocean of stars. For a while, they simply stood there, watching the sky. Finally, Elias broke the silence. Beautiful, isn't it? Vorik looked upward. Yes. The old hunter glanced toward the human. Do humans ever stop fighting long enough to appreciate it? Elias laughed softly. Honestly, he looked toward the stars. Sometimes we're terrible at it. The hunters waited. But we try. Another answer that somehow felt bigger than the words themselves. Eventually, Krell asked a question that had haunted him since the avalanche. Why do you keep helping us? The human considered the question carefully. Then he answered, because if our positions were reversed, he looked at the hunters. I'd hope someone would help me. Simple, direct, almost painfully simple. Krell searched for hidden meaning. There wasn't any. The human meant exactly what he said. The idea felt impossible. Helping others because one day you might need help yourself. Protecting strangers because life had value. Showing mercy because mercy mattered. Not strategy. Not politics. Not advantage. Just choice. Just humanity. Far above them. Unseen by everyone on the surface, millions across the galaxy watched the live broadcasts. Entire civilizations followed every moment of the hunt. At first, they had expected entertainment, competition, humiliation. Instead, they watched something else entirely. The galaxy's greatest predators were changing. Slowly, painfully, irreversibly. And somewhere deep inside Commander Krell, a question had begun to grow. If strength existed only to dominate the weak, was it really strength at all? Or was true strength something else entirely? Something humanity had understood long before reaching the stars. Something the hunters were only now beginning to see. The signal arrived shortly after sunrise. A single burst transmission cut through every communication channel on Kepri 9. Automated, ancient, urgent, warning, orbital defense network activated. The message repeated in dozens of forgotten languages. Then the mountains began to shake. Elias froze. No! Krell looked toward him. What is it? The human's expression had changed completely. The mining colonies. What about them? Elias pointed toward the distant horizon. When Kepri 9 was abandoned, the corporations left behind more than mining drones. The ground trembled again. Stronger this time. Planetary defense systems. Sharun's eyes widened. Those were dismantled centuries ago. They were supposed to be. Far above them, hidden beneath layers of ice and rock, enormous structures emerged from the mountainsides. Cannons, missile batteries, orbital rail platforms, machines designed to destroy invasion fleets, machines that had spent centuries without maintenance, without oversight, without restraint. Ancient sensors scanned the planet. They detected movement, life signs, unknown species. The systems reached their conclusion instantly. Hostile presence confirmed. Engagement authorized. The first rail cannon fired. The sky split apart. A transport shuttle attempting evacuation exploded in orbit. Fragments burned across the atmosphere like falling stars. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Elias moved. We need to shut them down. Krell stared at him. We need to survive. Elias looked directly at the Varkesh commander. If those platforms keep firing, every rescue ship that enters orbit dies. The implication landed heavily. Thousands of civilians, medical crews, rescue personnel, everyone coming to help would become targets. Vorik stepped forward. Where's the control center? The human pointed toward a distant mountain range. Old command nexus. Approximately 40 kilometers. Krell looked at the storm clouds gathering overhead. We'll never reach it in time. Elias checked his scanner. Then we move faster. For the next 6 hours, hunters and prey ran side by side across the frozen wilderness. The distinction between them had begun to disappear. The old rules no longer applied. Several times, automated drones attacked from beneath the snow. Several times Elias warned the others seconds before ambushes occurred. Several times the Varkesh returned the favor. When a collapsing bridge nearly sent Elias into an icy canyon, it was Krell who grabbed his arm. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The commander simply pulled the human to safety. Elias nodded. Thanks. Krell released his grip. Do not misunderstand. The human smiled. I won't. But both of them understood. Hours later, they reached the command nexus. The facility stretched deep beneath the mountain. Its systems were ancient but operational. Defense robots patrolled the corridors. Security turrets lined every chamber. The machines did not care who entered. Human, Varkesh, civilian, hunter, prey. To the machines, they were all targets. The battle through the facility became chaos. Vork destroyed security systems with precise strikes. Sharun disabled automated doors before they trapped the team inside kill zones. Krell fought with a ferocity Elias had only seen directed toward enemies. Now it protected allies. Finally, they reached the control chamber. The room was enormous. At its center stood the planetary defense core. Ancient processors glowed beneath layers of frost. Elias moved toward the terminal. Then alarms erupted. A final guardian descended from the ceiling, larger than the others, heavily armored, military grade. The machine fired immediately. The blast threw Elias across the room. Krell charged. His weapon struck the machine's armor. Barely a scratch. The guardian responded by launching him into a wall hard enough to crack stone. Sharun attacked next. The machine adapted instantly. Vork followed. The guardian anticipated every movement. It was faster, stronger, relentless. Elias struggled to his feet. Blood ran down the side of his face. We don't need to destroy it. Krell coughed as he stood. That's encouraging because we can't. The human pointed toward exposed power conduits along the ceiling. Keep it busy. The hunters looked at him. For perhaps the first time in Varkesh history, they followed a human battle plan. Without question, Krell charged first. Vork attacked from the left. Sharun from the right. The machine focused entirely on the three warriors, exactly as Elias needed. The human climbed the damaged maintenance structure above the chamber. Laser fire erupted around him. Metal exploded beneath his feet. Still he climbed. Krell watched in disbelief. The human had no armor, no combat enhancements, no military training. Yet he moved with absolute determination, not because he believed he couldn't fail, because failure was an option. Finally, Elias reached the conduit. He looked down toward the hunters. Get clear. The hunters ran. Elias ripped emergency release systems free. The conduit collapsed. Millions of volts surged through the chamber. The guardian disappeared inside a storm of electricity. Then silence. The machine fell, motionless, dead. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the room shook again. The defense network was preparing another orbital strike. Elias limped toward the terminal. His hands moved quickly across controls designed centuries before his species discovered interstellar travel. Come on. The countdown continued. 30 seconds. 25. 20. Krell looked toward orbit, displayed on the screen. Rescue vessels had arrived, completely unaware of the danger. 15 seconds. 10. 9. Then the countdown stopped. The room fell silent. Across the planet, missile batteries powered down. Rayo cannons disengaged. Defense satellites entered standby mode. Kepri, 9 became quiet once more. The hunters stared at the displays. They had done it, not won the hunt, saved lives. For some reason, that felt more important. Outside, rescue ships descended safely through the atmosphere. For the first time in days, the sky no longer looked hostile. Vork stepped beside Elias. The hunt is over. The human looked toward him. Is it? The old hunt master considered the question. Then slowly, deliberately, he removed the ceremonial hunter insignia from his armor, the symbol that represented thousands of years of tradition, thousands of years of superiority. He placed it in Elias's hand. No. Vork looked toward the horizon. It ended the moment we realized we were chasing the wrong thing. The human looked confused. The old hunter smiled. We came here to prove humans were prey. He looked directly into Elias's eyes. Instead, we discovered predators can learn from them. For the first time in Varkesh history, the hunters bowed, not to a king, not to an emperor, not to a conqueror, to a rescue worker from Earth. The return to civilization should have been a victory parade. Instead, it felt like a funeral for an idea. For 3,000 years, the Varkesh Dominion had built its identity around one belief. The strong hunted, the weak survived, power flowed in only one direction, from predator to prey, from conqueror to conquered, from fear to obedience. Khepri, 9 had shattered that belief, not with fleets, not with superweapons, not with military genius. A rescue worker with a medical kit and a backpack had accomplished what entire civilizations could not. He had changed the minds of hunters. Across the galaxy, billions watched the final transmission from a frozen moon. The recording spread through universities, military academies, government chambers, and homes. They watched Elias warn the hunters about the avalanche. They watched him feed those who pursued him. They watched him abandon the hunt to save strangers. They watched him enter a burning shuttle, knowing he might never return. And perhaps most astonishing of all, they watched the hunters change. For the first time in recorded history, the grand pursuit had ended without a capture, without a trophy, without a victor. Officially, the Varkesh Council declared the hunt inconclusive. The galaxy disagreed. The winner was obvious. The winner had never been competing. Weeks later, representatives from hundreds of species gathered once more at the Galactic Assembly. The chamber was more crowded than anyone could remember. Every seat occupied, every viewing platform full. Even worlds that rarely participated in galactic politics had sent observers, because everyone wanted to witness what happened next. Commander Krell entered first. His injuries from Khepri, 9 had mostly healed, but something else had changed. He moved differently. Slower, more thoughtful. The arrogance that once surrounded him had disappeared somewhere beneath the snow of a frozen moon. Then Elias Ward entered the chamber. The reaction surprised him. Delegates stood, one after another, then another. Eventually, the entire assembly rose to its feet, not because he was human, not because he had won, because gratitude often speaks louder than politics. Elias looked genuinely uncomfortable with the attention. Krell almost laughed. Of course he was. Humans, he had learned, often distrusted praise more than criticism. The Speaker of the Assembly raised a hand for silence. Commander Krell of the Varkesh Dominion. The great hunter stepped forward. According to tradition, this was the moment he should explain the failure, defend his honor, protect the reputation of his people. Instead, he said something no Varkesh had ever spoken publicly. We were wrong. The chamber became silent. Krell continued. For generations, we believed compassion was weakness. His eyes found Elias among the crowd. We believed mercy belonged to prey. He paused. Khepri, 9 taught us otherwise. Across the chamber, thousands listened carefully. We witnessed courage without reward, sacrifice without recognition, strength without domination. The commander straightened his shoulders. And we discovered that humanity possesses the most dangerous quality any species can have. The assembly waited. Krell answered quietly. They refuse to become what fear tells them to become. The words echoed through the chamber, because everyone understood them. Fear says protect yourself first. Humans run toward danger. Fear says strangers are not your responsibility. Humans build hospitals after disasters. Fear says survival matters more than principles. Humans keep promises even when nobody is watching. It made no sense. And yet civilization itself depended upon people making those choices. Krell stepped back. Then the old huntmaster Vorik approached the center platform. The ancient warrior held something in his hands. A ceremonial hunting spear, forged nearly 2,000 years earlier. The symbol of the grand pursuit. The symbol of Varkesh supremacy. Every generation had added names to its surface. Victories, conquests, prey. Vorik knelt. The movement sent waves of whispers through the assembly. No Varkesh huntmaster had knelt before an outsider in recorded history. The old warrior placed a spear at Elias's feet. From this day forward, the grand pursuit is ended. Shock spread across the chamber. Even Krell stared in surprise. Vor continued. We spent millennia proving that we could hunt anything. He looked toward the gathered civilizations. We never asked whether we should. Silence answered him. The galaxy does not need better predators. The old hunter looked toward Elias. It needs better guardians. For several moments, nobody moved. Then applause began somewhere among the outer delegations. Then another section joined. Then another. Eventually the entire assembly erupted, not for the end of a tradition, for the beginning of something new. Months passed, then years. The effects spread further than anyone expected. The Varkesh dissolved their hunter castes and transformed them into rescue divisions and disaster response teams. Former hunt masters became explorers. Trackers became search specialists. Warriors became protectors. At first, many species distrusted the change. Old reputations are difficult to erase. But slowly the stories accumulated. A Varkesh rescue ship arriving during a reactor failure. A Varkesh evacuation team during a planetary earthquake. A Varkesh pilot risking his life to save civilians trapped in orbit. Again and again, the former hunters appeared where danger was greatest. And each time, someone would inevitably ask why. The answer was always the same. Because someone needs help. The words belonged to Elias Ward. The galaxy had adopted them anyway. As for Elias himself, he returned to Earth. Returned to his rescue station. Returned to training exercises and emergency calls and long nights, helping people who would never know his name. When reporters asked why he hadn't used his fame for politics or influence, he seemed genuinely confused by the question. I already have a job. He smiled. And honestly, I like this one. Some heroes save worlds. Some change civilizations. Some transform history itself. And some simply show up when people need them most. Years later, Commander Krell visited Earth for the first time. He found Elias exactly where he expected, helping during flood evacuations in a coastal city, covered in mud, exhausted, complaining about paperwork. The former hunter watched the human coordinate rescue teams for nearly an hour before finally speaking. You saved an entire civilization. Elias adjusted a damaged radio. Technically several. Krell shook his head. Why return to this? The human looked around at the families being guided towards safety. Children, parents, grandparents, ordinary people having terrible days. Then he answered with the same simplicity that had always frustrated and impressed the galaxy in equal measure. Because these people need help today. Not tomorrow. Not eventually. Today. Krell looked at the rescue teams moving through the rain. Human volunteers worked beside Varkesh crews. Former predators beside former prey. The old labels felt ridiculous now. Perhaps they always had. The commander finally understood what humanity had brought to the stars. Not superior weapons. Not superior technology. A superior question. Not who is stronger, but what is strength for? The answer echoed through every world touched by the story of Kepri 9. Strength was for lifting others. Strength was for protecting the vulnerable. Strength was for standing between danger and those who could not stand alone. And perhaps that was why humanity spread so quickly through the hearts of the galaxy. Because humans had discovered something extraordinary long before they ever reached the stars. Civilization does not survive because of the people who can take the most. It survives because of the people willing to give the most away. On clear nights, long after the events of Kepri 9 became history lessons and academy lectures, young Varkesh children would sometimes ask their elders about the last grand pursuit. The elders would smile. Then they would tell the story. Not of the day the hunters caught their prey, but of the day the hunters learned the difference between power and greatness. And somewhere among the stars, the lesson endured. The universe is full of creatures capable of inspiring fear. But only a rare few inspire others to become better than they were before. Humanity, the galaxy discovered, was one of them. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human.